Today, I would like to review a documentary that was recently released called War Machine: The Iron Contender, that reviewed really the beginnings of Privateer Press through till the end and where some of the problems went wrong. My name's Ryan. I used to be good at War Machine. Welcome to SpellRack. JH Miniatures recently released a documentary called War Machine: The Iron Contender. As noted, it reviewed kind of the history of Privateer Press and what led up to the end of the game. I thought I would talk about the documentary. I think they did an incredible job. Talk about some of what I learned that I thought was really important and really what we could learn from Steamforged games, because my perspective as a player was very different as War Machine fell. For me, it was largely the way the play of the game changed. We went into Mark III, and then everything started with tier lists. And for me, tier lists just absolutely destroyed the game. It ruined a lot of balance, and it forced kind of skews. And you had theme forces that were good, and you had some theme forces that were absolutely terrible. And it was almost like not only do you have good casters now, you have good theme lists, and it for me it broke the balance. I didn't like the way we played the game anymore. The documentary talks about Privateer Press, and the thing I really want to focus on to start with is a game balance issue, because one of the items that they talked about was Privateer Press by the end had a very large range of models, and they had a very large range of models sitting on shelves and in warehouses. And so if you went to your local game store back in 2017 and you saw a shelf full of bad units, times 10 or 50, that was sitting off at a distributor with lots of units that nobody wanted to buy. So it brings up an interesting question of how game balance can help keep a game healthy. And this is not something I had ever thought about. To me, War Machine was what I played on the tabletop. To me, War Machine was, I don't like this list, and I just don't like what it's doing to the game and the way it forces me to play. And I have to do this certain thing so I can get this free model. The side that I completely missed that the documentary shed light on was, if half of your range is playable and half of your range is not playable, that's a lot of models to sit and do nothing. And then depending on what your requirements are of your local retailers to hold stock, or if you buy one thing, you have to buy something in bulk, now you have a lot of stuff sitting around, a lot of dead inventory. Yeah, you can replace the good stuff and it'll get sold, but you still have all that dead inventory. So the reason I want to note that now is this is a lesson for any games company and for Steamforged now as they approach their January balance updates. I'm not saying that they need to flip the game on its head every year, but I think they need to do a good job of cycling through models that are playable. They need to not only take a little bit off of the top of the things that are doing good. I've always been of the opinion, and now more than ever, that the right way to actually balance at an update is to bring the bad things up to the middle. Yes, you need to do some curbing of the stuff that's overpowered. If you have a caster that's got a 60% win rate, that needs to happen. If you have Kador from a year ago and their Colossal was just massive, and really that was also a point in the game where they were the only ones with a Colossal and it did too much damage and it took up too much table space and yada, yada, yada. Okay, you got to nerf that piece. Now at this point, everybody else is caught up. It's been overly nerfed. It needs to get rebuffed. But the point is, you need to bring up the lower end models, the lower end casters, the lower end ranges, so that those models can be cleared off of shelves. If we look at GW as somebody that has done this, GW frequently releases rules updates, and they've been known to take a pretty heavy nerf hammer to certain units and give pretty solid buffs to other units. And when something gets buffed to a certain degree and it becomes meta, then everybody wants to own 4 or 6 of them. And you actually end up with such high demand, depending on rules changes, that sometimes it's hard to find models. Depending on what you're dealing with, right? Or if it's special weapons and you need a lot of melta-guns or plasma guns or something for your Space Marines, those are harder to find. Obviously, 3D printers help that now, but if you're trying to stay true to GW products, you can create a real scarcity around items because of game balance. And so I think what I learned that I just never thought of it this way. I knew there were a ton of models that were terrible in War Machine, but I didn't think about the financial impact that it was having on game stores and distributors and the health of the game at large. If models are bad and they sit in warehouses, that's not good. Now, Steamforged, picking up where Privateer Press left off, actually has kind of an answer to this. If a lot of their models are resin printed on demand or with limited supply plus, printing on demand, then you don't oversupply those models that are not any good. I'll take a random example because I'm a Dusk player. We have Mage Hunter Assassins. There's a number of people that play Mage Hunter Assassins. I think they're terrible, but people like Mage Hunter Assassins. What nobody plays is there's a Mage Hunter ranged unit. I don't even remember what they're called. On the soulless models, there's swordsmen and like gun guys. Again, I don't remember what they're called, but nobody plays them. I can't imagine sales on them are very high in any way, shape, or form. And so the question is, if those models were being produced at a significant level, is that inventory being built up somewhere? So the TLDR is I've always been a fan of bringing up the bottom end of the game to balance it to the middle. Like I think for every nerf, you kind of want 2 buffs sort of thing. And I think that gets different models into rotations and gives them homes and will increase sales of things that are not selling. And so that would be obviously very good for the game. Since I did want to kind of talk about the documentary a little bit more, the rest of what the documentary kind of commented on was the fact that Privateer Press never really got away from metal models in a significant way and got into the HIPS plastics, and they didn't do it early enough. And when they did need to produce plastics, they went to China to do it. As I learned through the documentary, a lot of times when you go to China and you say, okay, we need 1,000 of X, they say, that's great. We own the molds and so we're your sole means of production. So I know you wanted 2,000, but we need you to buy 6,000. And the Chinese manufacturer forces a higher purchase on the company. And so that's another way where in order to get your 2,000 models, you had to buy 6, and now you end up with 4,000 extras. And if you're not properly balancing your game, that gets you in obviously a pretty bad spot. Again, I think Steamforged, where they are right now, I'm hoping they're making smarter decisions. I very much expect. I have a lot of trust in them that they're making better decisions. We've already see them moving over to the plastics and good production there. We've seen the quality of the resin up significantly. I've never actually really had issues with brittle models or bending. I mean, very, very little stuff, but not bad at all. I think their model production range has been very good. And if they're able to print on demand, it kind of helps with that oversupply. Anyway, the documentary, it was good. It was fun to listen to the energy that existed around the game when it was first released. And as it grew and as it developed and as it got into a competitive war game. And really, I mean, War Machine blew up. War Machine was absolutely massive back when Games Workshop wasn't as involved, right? Workshop had previously made the statement of make models, not rules. Well, as Privateer Press was failing, Games Workshop said, hey, you know what? Let's start making rules and engaging with our community. So I do think the demise of Privateer Press is also based on a massive improvement from Games Workshop. And so they did a lot better there and people shifted over to 40K and stuff. One thing I think the documentary got wrong from my perspective was that War Machine created the win at all costs gamer, the whack gamer. Having been in the heat of Mark II, going to tournaments all over the place, going to WTC, winning WTC, right? Like I saw the highest levels of competition multiple times. And I've never, to my recollection, had a bad game at a top table. I don't think that was ever an issue. I've had some mediocre games at middle tables with your sort of perennial 3-1 type player that's trying to do better, and so they might push a little bit hard. War Machine was a very good, clean tournament game. Don't get me wrong. It was great for that. But the expectation that it turned everybody into jerks, I just never actually saw that. To me, that was always much more of a 40K player mentality. And there was a lot more win at all cost in that community. I always thought of War Machine as being different. This documentaries going to the War Machine community and saying, no, this behavior originated here. And maybe it did. Maybe it did. Maybe it happened in communities that I wasn't aware of, but it's not something that I really ever experienced. So that's just one old player's perspective on that. Otherwise, I think the production standpoints were very well taken. The entire documentary, again, was very well done. It's worth a watch. It is over an hour, but it's a fun watch. Watch it at 125 speed. You'll get through it a little bit quicker. They did a great job. I hope they do more stuff like this. So anyway, shout out to them. I'll post a link in the video. Thanks everyone for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time.